You will have to listen to our speakers first. We all prepared short statements, and afterwards we will enter into a discussion among us and with all of you who are interested. So let's start with Agatha. Ladies first. Agatha, please. Your turn.
Thank you so much, Matthias. So hello, good afternoon. My name is Agatha Zakhov. I am Professor of Management at Canadian University, Dubai. So very warm good afternoon from Dubai. And I have a privilege to be a member of Working Group of Anti-Corruption from its very beginning. Additionally, I had the honor to collaborate with Professor Matthias Kleinhempel, with Jonas Hartley, and my many friends from all over the world on our toolkit, Working Group of Anti-Corruption toolkit for teaching anti-corruption. Or maybe I should for teaching integrity, because it's always better to find for something positive than negative. My dear ladies and gentlemen, among my friends from this group, I am well known as a person who leads at least 2 book projects during a particular year. And that's true. During the last 10 or 15 years, I was very lucky. I was very lucky because I had possibility to collaborate with fantastic people from all over the world, from United Nations Prime, and I published a few books in the top or leading publishing house about the teaching anti-corruption, or humanistic value in the world of academia, or integrity in the organization context. And shortly, with my colleagues from this group, Professor Wolfgang Amann, we published a book about the principles for responsible management and education in the time of artificial intelligence, and second book, which will be published next year, Teaching Time of Artificial Intelligence. So you cannot be surprised that when I was invited for this fantastic event and share my research idea inside this group, I was thinking about the topic, which from one side can combine the topic of the corruption with the pandemic time, COVID-19, and of course about the topic which at the same time my next research project. And this is why today I would like to talk about corruption during the COVID-19 pandemic time. Inspiration for that topic came from the few sources. First of all, a few years ago, I published a paper in which I tried to analyze and understand the corruption or the mechanism of corruption, how corruption split among the organization in the cluster, in the network organization. At that time, I using the metaphor from medicine, and I described corruption as a virus. And I hope you agree with me that corruption is a kind of virus. The second inspiration came from the current pandemic time. Unfortunately, nowadays, when many of us are fighting for our health of our family members, we are fighting for our human dignity, there are many people who would like to make a profit, without any ethical values. And the greed is only the motivation for them. You may tell me few bad apples. Unfortunately, not only a few bad apples. I was shocked when I noticed that during the first month of the COVID-19 pandemic, till January 2020, Transparency International reported 2,000 cases of corruption or cases of corruption connected with COVID-19. Can you imagine yourself? So it's not only a few bad apples. And those cases are not connected with particular political system, value system, culture value system, not at all. From Brazil to United States, Italy to Poland, from Germany to Greece, from India to Japan, everywhere, unfortunately, we can find cases of corruption during COVID-19. And the next inspiration came, for this topic, came from the maybe very trivial sentence that pandemics are immanent part of the human being history. Pandemics were with us 100 years ago. We are now living in the pandemic time. And unfortunately, in the nearest future, probably we have to cope with pandemic. However, I would like to see pandemic time not only as a very challenging and difficult time, but also as a time of innovation and time from which we can take the lesson, and then after pandemic time we can implement these lessons to make immunity system against corruption stronger. So I would like to see the pandemic like Botticelli in his famous painting Primavera, spring. I would like to see the time after pandemic, and I would like to see it as a new better life. And I'm sure that when we have taken lessons from all those corruption cases and when we implement it in our organization, we will be able to develop a better social and political system after COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, to give you the example also that that pandemic time can to be a source of innovation, please let me only take a few of those examples from the history. Let's say Shakespeare. Shakespeare, he wrote his King Lear during the quarantine, and even Hamlet inspired by the death of his son in the age of 11 because of the pandemic. And Newton couldn't make a continuation of his study at the Cambridge University because this university at that time was particularly closed because of the pandemic. And during this pandemic time, Newton discovered most of his law. So I would like to see once again, I would like to see the pandemic as a time of innovation. And I truly believe that our generation, will be judged not only how we cope this pandemic time, not how quickly we were able to discover the vaccine against corruption, but this how means if we will be able to implement such kind of values like transparency, integrity, trust, and dignity during and after pandemic time. So I hope that this book will be a great opportunity for showing a global perspective of cases of corruption during the virus of corruption during COVID-19 time, and we'll be able, based on those lessons from those cases, we'll be able to make our immunity system against corruption stronger. So thank you so much, Matthias, and coming back to you.
Thank you, Agatha. And next in line is Wolfgang Ammann. Please, Wolfgang.
Thank you, Matthias. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Wolfgang Ammann, and I'm speaking to you from Qatar. It has been a pleasure to work with these colleagues in the working group on anti-corruption for now, I think, 10 years or more. I primarily work in executive education, and the free online curriculum on anti-corruption surely helps prepare good sessions, simply because people can prepare before coming to the sessions. Then we can really talk about what matters. In executive education, managers and leaders, they don't want to learn for an unknown point in time in the future. They need to produce results. They need to get tangible, practical wisdom in order to have impact. In that sense, in executive education in particular, what we need to speak about is the anti-fragile nature of corruption. Like a muscle grows when challenged, corruption seems to evolve, to grow, to metamorphose as soon as it's challenged. And we have to talk about this nature in management education, which is why we need these analogies from other areas than maybe the core business books in order to be fashionable and modern and up to date. Just a quick example. There is this great book by a guy called Leonard Dahlgren. He was managing the market entry of IKEA in Russia. And can be likened to a good book. You know, a good book doesn't one chapter, and similar to IKEA in Russia, that's several chapters. And I think it helps when we talk about corruption to in terms of a book with multiple chapters. In chapter 1, Leonard was overwhelmed with bureaucrats. There was a threat to bribe or to be shut down or to not get electricity. They adapted in chapter 2. In chapter 3, IKEA became corrupt. And in chapter that followed after, IKEA became corrupt in a different way, and hopefully learning kicks in quite quickly. The good news for IKEA was that the book had a happy end, but thinking in terms of a book with various chapters help us prepare our graduates, our leaders and managers to get ready for the real world out there, where corruption is likely to be quite anti-fragile. It changes, it adapts. IKEA was talking to government officials that had demands, but was able then to manage them in the end. Agatha, in turn, talked about now the pandemic. And I think in many countries, the pandemic gave rise to many corruption temptations, and it shows just in new forms, which proves once more we have to adapt and keep our executive education, our management education up to date as much as possible, and her initiative surely helps. So ladies and gentlemen, let's keep on learning ourselves as program directors, as deans, as faculty, as corruption surely will evolve much further. Thank you so much for having me today. Matthias, back over to you.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Next in line is Christian.
Very much. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. So I feel today almost like you guys in the Middle East, right? Here it's getting warmer and warmer, but hopefully we will not reach the temperatures that you are facing, but more than 30 plus degrees here in Switzerland is quite challenging for us already. So it's a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about corruption in the workplace and anti-corruption efforts in the workplace. And Agatha, you mentioned it already. It's often a crisis that leads to change. And what we see in the business world, it's similar. So companies start to implement anti-corruption education and learning issues after a crisis. If they had a corruption scandal, or if a close competitor had a scandal, then they started to talk about these issues with their employees. So started to implement corporate trainings on anti-corruption. But what we see there is that we still today have a lot of scandals happening. And Agatha, you mentioned only the pandemic that gave opportunity, right? Because procurement needed to be quick, so a lot of opportunities for corrupt behavior there. So unfortunately, we still see this. And what we learned from research there is that most of the time, people know that they are not behaving correctly. So there is not an awareness issue anymore there. So people know that corruption is bad, that it benefits only a few, however, then in business practice, we still see so many cases. So what we witness and what is well documented is this knowledge practice gap. So people know, they are aware of these issues. However, when it comes to then implementing and behaving in the right way, then we see a lot of failure still happening. So we learn that if we have assessments of trainings, that people then they increase their knowledge. They say, yeah, I'm now able to reflect on these issues, but only a minority then thinks or feels the need to really behave with integrity afterwards. So what we learned is that the training approaches that are out there currently are really focusing too strongly on the awareness raising, but not on the other aspects that are important and what we know from behavioral ethics, that after being aware, you need to be able to judge correctly, and afterwards, very importantly, you need to be motivated and create the intention to behave on this behavior, to act accordingly, and then also act accordingly. So what we need to do and what we need to develop as well is more training tools that really focus on this behavioral aspect, create the intentions of people to act with integrity in their day-to-day business life. And this is a challenge also for us that we need to implement and create new training tools, new training formats to help the business leaders also and the other people in business really to act on their values. So maybe this is for now my short input. Over to you again, Matthias, and I'm I hope we have some time to discuss these issues later as well.
Many, many thanks, Christian. And now it's Shiv's turn. Shiv.
Thank you. And it's wonderful to be here. And it's my privilege to be part of this anti-corruption learning journey during more than last 1 decade while working with this wonderful working group. I would be touching on 2 issues. One is the issue of capacity, and another is the issue of learning resources. And what already Christian highlighted, that the challenge we are facing in terms of the difference between the theory and practice, lack of contextualized material available for the training and development under the specific context. So, and this we very much came across after the launch of our toolkit in 2012, while we were piloting our anti-corruption toolkit in Africa and Asia. So we found that one common trend, that everyone complained about the capacity, everyone is talked about the learning resources. And we tried to look deeper into that, what was that is causing this deficiency into this. And we found the one very interesting thing in our working group agenda also, we have 2 approaches. One is horizontal integration, another is vertical integration of the anti-corruption teaching toolkit. Vertical we have achieved so far, but horizontal when it comes to mainstreaming of the issue in other main courses in the business school, particularly in MBA program, that's somewhere I think more work is needed. And when we try to look into the learning resource issue, we found that there are typically 3 types of material we are using. One is frameworks, toolkits, tools, and theoretical approaches. Second is scenarios, cases, dilemmas. And third one is some innovations like giving voice to values or some other methodologies. However, the contextualization is the major challenge, and that is linked to the research. And research is, if you look at the research paradigm in the mainstream business schools, that is more towards academic rigor, fine, but the methodologies that don't support the creation of knowledge which is required for the knowledge dissemination that will help in capacity building in anti-corruption. So that's the one issue. And I would definitely request all the business schools leaders, if they can look into this, deans, if they can try to find what innovations they can bring in transforming the nature of research for relevant knowledge creation that works. And finally, just one point regarding capacity, that is, there is a linkage of, when I see the motivation of students, faculty members, as well as employers, the area of thirst that is needed, thirst area need to be more on anti-corruption and ethical issues if we really want to mainstream it. For now, I would like to end here, and later, if the time permits, would be great to interact further. Over to you, Matthias. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shiv. We are almost through, but I think we lost Ron Berenbaum somewhere on his way from his home to this platform. So I will try to replace him, which is not easy, of course, and close our speakers list with another aspect we are dealing with in our anti-corruption working group. Education in anti-corruption, of course, is very important. Well-trained executives are the best change agents, because they are the leaders in their organizations, and they define the tone at the top and the organizational culture. And compliance officers in every single survey emphasize the importance of the tone at the top as the main driver for an integrity culture in their organization. And education is what academics do. Besides publishing papers and books, Agatha, for example, publishes every year at least 2 books and articles. So, but if you look around, and as Christian said, it seems not be enough to make an impact on business. We may have to do a bit more, and I think we can. there's quite some room for business schools and universities to make meaningful contributions in the fight against corruption beyond education, strictly spoken. To offer effective support in education, academia and business have to work hand in hand. Academic research and concepts are interesting, not helpful. Companies need a practical approach and tools ready to implement. Theoretical aspects and concepts to be based on and complement from the real business world. Therefore, mixed academia business programs are, we think, very good to that. In our work, we promote the establishment of anti-corruption centers at business schools and universities where they work together with business. Can be fitted to improve effectively various aspects of the fight against corruption. One problem we encounter is that research in the anti-corruption field is often an extremely difficult enterprise, as companies tend not to share their experience in the matter unless they play a positive role in the drama. That's very understandable position, as they are not interested to harm their reputation any further by being negatively discussed subjects for years to come in business schools and universities' classrooms around the world. Business schools working closely together with executives have better access to information and data and gain their trust to conduct research resulting in valuable and applied research and teaching material. But there are other aspects. The mixed centers offer best practices platforms for the exchange of experiences with practitioners, being them compliance officers, corporate lawyers, CFOs, etc. And these platforms work both ways. They give academics better insights into what really is happening in companies, and they help business with concepts and ideas developed by academics. And last but not least, assistance in implementing compliance programs and other anti-corruption tools. Business schools with experience in working in anti-corruption matters with businesses are able to assist companies in planning their first or second steps in compliance matters, such as establishing a code of conduct, implementing compliance programs, elements, because they possess the academic background and the international framework and know well the regulatory requirements. So all these alternatives and opportunities for business schools to work with business beyond teaching and researching contribute, in our opinion, to fight corruption more effectively. So let's do it and open your integrity center at your university or business school. Our working group can help you. Thank you very much. And now I think we are open to start the answers and question session. Any questions from the audience?
I think there was a question regarding the use of technology and specifically AI with the objective of corruption mitigation and monitoring in the chat. So maybe I can briefly respond to that. I think, Agatha, you mentioned the book that is coming up, but maybe I can go first because we did some research there as well. So with colleagues from our data science department, we developed an AI-based tool to identify corruption-related communication. And I think these technologies can be helpful in order to make a next step towards integrity. However, and I think Wolfgang, you mentioned it, right? So people adapt, they are quite flexible. If we develop a new tool and we don't consider the human aspect, the behavioral aspect, then people will just get smarter, and next time they have a new system of how to beat them the algorithm until they get caught, and then the next one will develop it again. So I think technology is a good tool, but if we want to fight corruption only with technology, we will fail. That's my short observation there. Maybe some of you have some other observations there.
Are there other observations or comments on that? Artificial intelligence is one of the hot discussion topics among compliance officers. They try to use it to target better their training sessions.
Yes, if I can add a few. Unfortunately, Christian, I don't know where you can see the question about the technology and anti-corruption. I just checked the chat, sorry. You know, together with Wolfgang, we are making a book about the artificial intelligence using for teaching anti-corruption, and I have a technical problem with IT. You know, Prime, yes, during the time of artificial intelligence, it will be one of our book. And Wolfgang, I am really surprised that you didn't mention about chapters in our book, which shortly will be out about the teaching anti-corruption of artificial intelligence. You know, this book is structured a little bit ethics of artificial intelligence. So first, we would like to show the possibility how we can use artificial intelligence in teaching anti-corruption and what is the impact of artificial intelligence on business and on education. Of course, we are not only talking about the chatbots, but generally using artificial intelligence as a tool, as a model tool that we can use. But also we are focused on this aspect of ethics of the artificial intelligence. Because right now we can see that, you know, the artificial intelligence can not only create a painting like maybe not like Botticelli, for sure not. However, can make can painting a fantastic picture and also can write the article, the scientific article. So the intelligence, and because of the COVID-19, COVID-19, artificial intelligence is not just a future who is in front of our door. No, artificial intelligence is now with us. Is this revolution, you know, came much faster because of this pandemic time. So we in our books, I think that Wolfgang, you agree with me, we try to start discussion, maybe not to start the discussion, but to add small little piece of our understanding of ethics of artificial intelligence.
Any further comments on that? If not, I would like to come back to what Christian said. Christian, in line with what he said before, he mentioned that technology alone will not solve the problem. It's more a problem of decision making, if I understood it correctly. And maybe, Christian, you want to elaborate a little bit on that. How can we achieve that people make better decisions in these, let's say, not only troubled times, but troubled issues?
Yeah, with regarding to decision making, we know that also from behavioral ethics that we need certain heuristics, right? And these heuristics at the end don't need to be very complex, right? Very short heuristics already help us to make good decisions, or better decisions at least, or avoid wrong decisions. Maybe that's the right term to put it, hopefully. So, and one thing that is often discussed in the community as well is, for example, the first page check. So if you would read about your behavior on the first page of your local newspaper or the most prestigious newspaper in your region, would you feel good about this, and would your neighbors then would appreciate what you have done, or is this something that would challenge you? So and they would challenge you on this behavior. So I think these are and gut feelings, things like that, right? So these are small tools that can be used and that normally lead, as I mentioned, because people normally, it's not about that they are not aware of these things or that they don't know that this is not the right thing to do. They know normally. And so therefore we need to help them to take these decisions in a way that also, and a tone from the top was mentioned, right? That in a situation where someone feels that it is not the right thing to do, that he or she then is backed by senior management, that this is the right decision, and that this is then not later something that he or she will be not get a bonus due to that, or will not get promoted due to these decisions that were based on these values. So I think these are important issues, short and brief heuristics, but then also the backing from senior management regarding these issues.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments on that? If not, I would like to shift to Shiv with another question. How can an anti-corruption course be effectively taught to graduate students who are significantly younger than our postgraduate students, and they are quite different? Generation Z is very different to, well, at least my generation, and they hate long talks, and they hate PowerPoints, and they especially want to know what's the purpose, the why, the famous why question. So how do we have to change our teaching methods and eventually teaching content as well to reach them effectively?
I'd like to reply to this with the two research findings that we have. One, the research led by Wolfgang on learning style versatility, where we tried to look into that, how the learning style versatility affects the learning process. And we found that there were certain patterns emerging at undergraduate and postgraduate level or graduate level. So the one thing is that we need to innovate in terms of the toolkit or the learning material which suits the learning style versatility of the group that we are targeting. And second thing I would like to pitch on with application of artificial intelligence, because the book that Agatha, Wolfgang, and participating in that, we have 1 or 2 chapters focusing on how to develop teaching methods for teaching at different levels of learning. So the learning outcomes are different, the target audience is different, the context is different, and then we are trying to see how the technology can help in expediting the learning process. And that's where the role of artificial intelligence also becomes very important, not only in teaching, but also in continuously monitoring and assessing. And it's like something like a very dynamic model that supports the teaching learning at undergraduate level. So these are my 2 takes that I would like to add.
Okay, many thanks. Shiv, I imagine this question will be already discussed at the Global Forum in general terms, because it applies to everybody who's teaching. So any further issues, questions, comments? No, if that's not the case, then Christian?
No, I saw that we have some comments by Charles regarding the work of the World Bank regarding anti-corruption. And I think I really appreciate that, for example, the World Bank is now also taking their leading role, because if you remember back in the 90s, it was a former executive of the World Bank that felt that it's needed to found an NGO called Transparency International, because he realized that in his work in the bank, it was not possible to address these issues in a way he felt back then that it's needed. So I think we've come a long way since the last 2-3 decades, and a lot of institutions have joined this movement. And I, as I said, I congratulate those institutions that are really trying to make a difference there. And hopefully our institutions are also part of this. And maybe just as a little add, we will have a conversation with a colleague from the UNESCO on the 29th of June during our integrity talk. So at 3 p.m. European time, 9 a.m. New York time. So please feel free to join us there if you are interested in our conversation as a working group. I will post the link to the event in the chat in a couple of seconds.
Okay, thank you, Christian. I'm a little bit worried because apparently you can see comments I can't see. But anyhow, once you can see them and you bring them in, everything is fine and solved. Thank you so much, Ariel. We are done. So what should we do? Do you kick us out or do we have to leave voluntarily?
I think we have still 4 minutes to go, and we have another question if you would like to answer this, right? Or 2 more questions, right? So
do you have questions? Then bring them in.
Yeah, how can we create a social acceptance of mistakes as lessons? And do you think this would progress our work to stop corruption? So social acceptance of mistakes and anti-corruption. Any thoughts on that?
If I may jump in, I think this should be part of leadership development, to provide individuals and the organizations with a strong purpose, with the right culture, to be on track, that even if there's no rule or guideline, that they know precisely what to do. And that there is a psychological safety to speak up if something is not on track. But I'm not sure if corruption then can be framed as a mistake. Usually it happens quite intentionally. So in that sense, we rather need to understand better why derailment takes place. Is it a question of lack of ethics, a lack of supervision? And all of these factors, I think, can be taken care of with sound leadership development.
Any comment on that besides Wolfgang's comment?
Agatha, you're muted. Agatha, you're still muted. And Shiv, shall we start with you and then go to Agatha?
Yeah, sure. So just I would like to quickly add that the shifting the gear wisdom, and that's where, because knowledge doesn't traditionally knowledge doesn't provide the room for the mistakes and learning from that to that level what the wisdom does. So I think that in business schools, how we can drive the leadership development with wisdom intervention, that's the one area which could be helpful in this.
Yes, I don't know if I can right now. So I would like also add one more point to this ethical decision-making process and to that topic, that what we can do, and we are really doing that, is first of all, of course, we can create the ethical infrastructure inside the organization. Yes, we can do it. We can create a fantastic law. Yes, we can do it against corruption. However, behind those laws and ethical infrastructure standing human being with its value, personality, and this is the role for our education. This is for all for us. How we should educate a future business leader, a wise business leader who not only know what to do, how to do, but how to do it with integrity. And I hope that our group has this small impact to that, how to educate future business leader, be able to cope with all this corruption and ethical problems in the wise way, so with integrity. Thank you.
And Christian, you had a last question, or we are done? Okay, thank you all very, very much. Hope it has been useful for the audience, and see you whenever you want and whenever you think our working group can be of help for your integrity center you are up to start surely. Okay, bye-bye. Ariel, what should we do?
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank everyone.
Stay well and
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Matthias.